Hi, my name is Amanda Legado, and I'm going to be doing my presentation on the analysis of Amy Winehouse from Freud's classical psychoanalytic theory. So a quick bio. Her name was Amy Jade Whitehouse. She was born on September 14th, 1983 in London, England. Her father was a cab driver and her mother was a pharmacist. She was introduced to music as a very young girl. Her parents divorced when she was 8 years old, and she moved with her mother to Southgate, England. Shortly after, she dropped out of school to take part in a jazz band. Throughout her very young adulthood, she was rebellious. She was always rebellious. Her rebellious ways continued into her adult life and ended in drug addictions, alcoholism, and arrest for possession of drugs and allegations of adultery. She lived a very short life. She died when she was just 27. So, Freud's psychoanalytic theory. Childhood experiences, as we know, are important for adult behavior and personality. Early on in Amy's life, she did only what was important to her. As an adolescent, piercing her nose, getting expelled from school, and acting in reckless ways. She never conformed to social norms. As she aged, she continued to draw attention to her personal desires, and she was driven entirely by pleasure. She engaged in everyday drinking and drug habits. She once admitted in 2007, I quote, "The more insecure I feel, the more I drink." Freud would categorize her actions as showing impulsivity and selfishness. So Amy has this tattoo on her left arm. That tattoo on her left arm, it could be interpreted the sadness of her loss from her father. It reads "Daddy's Girl," which surrounds like a horseshoe, and a woman exposing her breasts in a seductive manner. This tattoo represents the place she would like to have held in her father's life. The horseshoe represents luck or a game, and games, like everything, can be won. The seductive woman could be interpreted as the woman who took her from her dad. So the time that she couldn't spend with her dad, it was because of that lady. So this tattoo, as a whole, could be interpreted as Amy trying to reclaim her father from that woman. Freud's psychoanalytic theory continued. Personality. Instinctual drives such as food, sex, and aggression. It also includes unconscious processes, early childhood influences, and parental behavior is required for normal development. Amy's father was never there, and her mom didn't really know how to be a mom. She didn't know how to fulfill that hole that she had left with. Her parents were emotionally unavailable for her throughout the first fundamental 5 years of her life, the 5 years of development. Even though she was young, she was aware that her father was having an affair with another woman. And with her father's negligence and her mother's lack of recognition for the sadness of her loss, Amy fell into depression. Throughout the years, she ended up on antidepressants. Personality structure, the id. The id operates largely on the pleasure principle. Amy Winehouse's personality could be considered to consist of an overactive id. She pursues her pleasures such as her strange ways of dressing, exaggerated makeup, tattoos, piercings, and other behaviors not conforming to social norms. The ego and the superego. She's not always aware of reality, and she disregards that her behaviors have consequences. She chooses to openly display her addiction to alcohol and drugs by showing up to concerts drunk and high. She doesn't care. Her inability to counterbalance its pleasure-seeking demands for sex and aggression confirm that she has an overactive id. Conflict. An individual's thoughts and behaviors are the result of an interaction of the id, the superego, and the ego. These interaction creates conflict or anxiety that leads the use of defense mechanisms. In my opinion, Amy suffered from neurotic anxiety. She was subconsciously fearful of abandonment as her father had left her for his mistress when she was only 8 years old. Throughout her adult life, she continued to display these behaviors and living in fear of abandonment. She also lived in constant fear of losing her husband, Blake, as well. She carried an aggressive, abusive relationship with him, and they were physical, and she was also mentally abused by him. She stated to the press once, "I want to feel what he's feeling. I want to be on the same level. Otherwise, he's there and I'm here. And any kind of separateness can mean too much space." Conflict continued. Defense mechanisms. Denial. Amy lived in denial of her actions to drug and alcohol. This displays when she fails to register for rehab on multiple occasions and even recording a song, Rehab, the No, No, No song. Refusal to acknowledge the anxiety-provoking relationship she held with Blake. In 2007, photos surfaced of a bruised, bandaged Amy and scratched of Blake. The couple got into a very heated fight the night before, but she insisted to the media that Blake did not hit her. Instead, she made up a story of Blake finding his wife cutting himself before doing drugs. She was lying to herself about the unhealthy relationship she was in. Repression. She learned to set aside her feelings of loss growing up without a father, lack of a father figure. The neglect from her parents throughout her childhood caused Amy to have trouble forming and maintaining healthy romantic relationships later in her life. For example, with Blake. Eating disorders. Bulimia nervosa. The effect of such psychological defense against her loss and grief was devastating to Amy. The feelings she felt were much too strong for her to bear. She soon after turned to bulimia. Her compulsion to binge and purge makes perfect sense if the unconscious fantasies in bulimia are understood. The psychological conflict is expressed by not having control over when to stop eating. Amy couldn't get enough. This represents the mentality of wanting it all, then hating herself for seeking comfort in food. She would vomit in efforts to eliminate that dependency on her substitution for love or comfort in food. The unconscious fantasy for bulimic anorexic is to make all emotional dependency non-existent. Summary. Amy's losses began when she was just a young girl. She lacked a father figure from a young age. Her parents' divorce took a huge toll on her. Signs began to show early after. She was expelled from school, she got her nose pierced, and she tattooed the daddy's girl. From these experiences and traumas, she developed an oral fixation, a thumb sucking, showed right there to the right. She also showed signs of denial of her habits such as smoking, drinking, also of her unhealthy relationship with her boyfriend Blake, sublimation. She was an artist, and she expressed her unacceptable urges through her music. Repression. Amy was traumatized by her father's departure subconsciously and expressed these aggressions through her drug abuse and recklessness. She thought and acted as she wanted. Her alcohol and drug abuse ended her life at a very young age of 27. She was found dead in her home due to alcohol poisoning. References.